The polls showed that 75% of the American public were now at odds with Johnson's Vietnam policy.
Johnson was living emotionally, if not physically, in the Situation Room of the White House where the messages come in from overseas. He really lived every battle report, every casualty report. It was an excruciating torment for him.
The pressure, unremitting on Lyndon Johnson in 1968.
The pressure was staggering. I mean, just think about going to bed at night with kids outside chanting, "Hey, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today?" Hey, hey, LBJ!
I was writing a speech for the president. He had agreed that though he didn't make one at the State of the Union in January, that he would have to make a speech about Vietnam.
Tonight, I have ordered our aircraft, I'd back up there, back up again.
It's March 31st, and Lyndon Johnson is rehearsing the speech on a teleprompter.
We are reducing.
We finally got kind of agreement that we'd stop bombing over about 80 or 90% of North Vietnam.
Not going to, and one thing you say you've ordered it, and the next day you're going to order it. You get that, Jim? Yeah. Mark it on your outfit over there.
And I'd say, Mr. President, the speech has no ending. He said, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
We are reducing, substantially reducing the present level of hostility.
There was an ending to the speech, but few had any idea of what Johnson had in mind.
I shall not seek, and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
My colleague Roger Mudd has been in the CBS studios here in Washington with me. Roger, no question about it, this was a bombshell politically.
It's what I'd rather do, Dan, is go home and come back tomorrow morning and begin to talk about it.
Well, I think we all would rather. It is a stunning moment, and for those of you in the audience who may be saying, well, those two fellows are having a hard time coming up with something to say, that's the truth of the matter, because
it's more than a lightning bolt, it's more than an earthquake, and there's this absolute surge of euphoria which lasts all of 4 days. We have 4 days, my generation, to celebrate this incredible triumph.
Just 4 days to celebrate, because believe it or not, the Johnson bombshell was not the biggest story of the week. April Fool's Day, 1968. LBJ's withdrawal was so unexpected that if you'd gone to bed early the night before, you might have thought this headline was a joke. But the North Vietnamese believed it, and 2 days later they agreed to hold peace talks.
Our nation is obsessed with the guns of war in Vietnam.
Martin Luther King had long before linked his own cause to the anti-war movement. Ironically, he saw the withdrawal of this great civil rights president as a victory. At this point, Dr. King was in Memphis to lead a sanitation workers' strike.
Western District, Tennessee. Show you my document.
As usual, the authorities were trying to stop him.
How do you know? You're Deputy Marshal.
Yes,
Yes, sir. Deputy Marshal.
Yes, I am.
It was all very gentlemanly, like the coin toss at a football game.
What do you have?
We have temporary restraining order.
Reverend Bevel will be
Wait a minute, this is Lee. This is one for Lee here.
This is Bevel.
Bevel. Now you're Abernathy.
No, I'm
The civility belied the violence that had occurred there just 1 week before. Here, for the first time, one of Dr. King's nonviolent demonstrations had gotten out of control. In the rioting that followed, 1 person was killed and 60 were injured. This was a tough time for the civil rights movement, but in some ways it was never stronger. 2 major civil rights bills had been passed into law, and a 3rd was in the congressional hopper. At this moment, black leadership was as dynamic as it would ever be.
And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land.
I was watching television, and I saw the speech that Daddy had delivered the evening prior. And I remember sitting there thinking, he looks like he's far away. There was this look in his eyes as if he wasn't where he was, but he was somewhere else.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming.
I decided to go back to my mother's room, and she was in the room on the phone. I found out later speaking to Reverend Jackson, and that's when the announcement came on.
The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death by an assassin late today.
To this day, every time there's one of those special announcements, my heart stops. It skips a beat, because that was the first word that I received. And I remember running out of the room and going to my bedroom and getting on my knees, and I just prayed, please, Father, please, Lord, don't let anything happen to my father.
I have some very sad news for all of you, and I think sad news for all of our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
I was sure someone had bombed the motel because there was this enormous blast. And because Dr. King was behind me on the balcony, I could not see him. And about that same time, I noticed there was a bunch of people underneath the balcony there jumping up and down and making noises. But almost in that same instant, I could hear these noises change from something that you couldn't identify to this sort of a wail.
I'm tired, and I'm so weary.
To some extent, Dr. King has been a buffer the last 2 years between the black community and the white community. The white people do not know it, but the white people's best friend is dead. The black people's leader, our Moses, has been taken from us by hatred and bitterness. And somehow this nation has to continue to be challenged and to be transformed from what it is to what it ought to be.
I remember crying very little. And when I think about how easily I cry, I know that that was totally out of character and totally because I could not deal with the reality. And I kept looking at my mother because she is not a crier at all, never was. And so I was trying to be like Mommy. And it took several years before it really dawned on me that he was gone, that he was really gone and he wasn't coming back.
I ask every citizen to reject the blind violence that has struck Dr. King.
The president got Martin Luther King Sr. on the phone and said, "I'm praying for you." And the old man said, "Oh, Mr. President, I'll be praying for you." There was some looting in Washington, and as the hours went by, it became worse. And the question was whether to move troops into Washington.
I had in my office a map of Washington, D.C. with pins on it as to where all the fires were and all the riots were. We knew we were under siege after King's assassination. Remember, we had riots in about 130 American cities. 130 American cities. We had troops in Washington. We had troops in Chicago. We had troops in Baltimore. We had troops on alert all over the country.
All the things that my father did were about peace and nonviolence. So my response was that it was a slap in his face for people to respond in the way that they did. But then as I got older, I understood where that response came from and understood it completely.
Before he was killed, Dr. King had conceived the idea of a poor people's march on Washington. The theme was a job or a guaranteed income for everyone. It was left to his followers to carry out what he had called his last greatest dream.
We went back to Memphis, an old farm cart with mules. And then that cart went all through the South and all these communities. Very emotional.
By the time the marchers got to Washington, a shanty town had sprung up near the wall and was given the name Resurrection City. But only 2,500 squatters would eventually arrive, and with them came an endless rain. It might have been an omen, because nothing ever came of the Poor People's Campaign. No legislation, nothing. It was the last civil rights demonstration of that year. the last major protest for over a decade.